In 2004, the National Park Service asked the United States Geological Survey to recommend management protocols that would provide technical advice in the form of opinions for managing protected species at the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. The protocols were released to the public in October of 2005. I have examined those protocols in great detail, and they are what the National Park Service asked the USGS to provide them. Management opinions. The protocols cite references, citations, have brief discussion, and then they come out with a range of options for shutting down sections of the seashore to protect species. That's fine. They also indicate, the protocols also indicate that they can be used by the Park Service as management tools. There's nothing in the law that requires that they be considered, to manage the resource. It's also very well stated in those protocols that they're the opinions of scientists. Well, when you look further at these protocols that have now been used to regulate and close off large sections of the seashore, you ask the question, or you should ask the question, how were these reviewed? Were these ever intended to be regulatory mechanisms, basis, in other words, standards? And the answer is no, they never were intended to be used that way. You find out some other disturbing things when you look deeply at these protocols. First off, when they were released, they were released in what I would call a very informal manner. These protocols aren't even dated. These protocols have no government document number associated with them. These protocols do not appear in the Federal Register. These protocols do, however, appear on the website, National Park Service, Cape Hatteras National Seashore. These protocols, when you ask to see the review files, the peer review files, as specified by USGS peer review regulations, there are none. This I find disturbing, very disturbing. For one reason, it doesn't give the public any sense that these were really done in an open forum where the public has a true understanding of what went on in those procedures. The USGS protocols can be found on the website, and you should read those protocols if you have the time, but let me read how they define peer review, which is the exact proper definition of peer review. They said peer review is a cornerstone of scientific practice, validates and ensures the quality of published science. Peer review is scrutiny of work or ideas by one or more others' peers who are sufficiently well qualified, who are without conflict of interest, and who are not associated with the work being performed. There's no indication that the reviewers, who are really not specified in the protocols, really complied with this USGS regulation. What's important here is this term conflict of interest. When you look closer at the protocols, you find they were done under cooperative agreement. Most citizens don't understand the implications of cooperative agreement. Cooperative agreement is different from a contract. In a contract, a contractor has an arm's length relationship with the government and provides a product to the government without interference. In a cooperative agreement, researchers, let's say university researchers or private researchers can work side by side with government scientists in order to determine some research product for the government. Even then, it needs to be disclosed the relationship that the researchers have with special interest groups, especially if those materials, those science materials, are going to be used to regulate the public. And in the case of the interim protocols, that was not done. Even where names appear on those interim protocols, it's quite clear to those of us who have knowledge of activists and certain environmental organizations that they took part in the preparation of that science, so-called science material. Well, once again, I want to say there's very little science in those protocols. A citation of a study does not constitute a body of science. It simply refers to that body of science. And what occurs in these protocols is the fact that it's never been explained to the public how the scientists got from the observations in the studies to the restricted boundary distances that have now regulated the public and prevented thousands of citizens from having access to the national seashore. That is clearly what happens when materials are not properly reviewed. The responsible party for the science that's the basis of regulations is the federal government. The U.S. Park Service is primarily a management organization. The Department of Interior, however, has science arm that can prepare a body of information properly assessed in detail that explains the basis for its decisions in regulating the national seashore. They owe that to the public. Now, if they're incapable of doing that, we have another organization in government called the National Academy of Sciences, set up by President Lincoln back in the 1800s, that's fully capable of assessing a body of information that justifies, if we wish to justify it based on science, how we manage the seashore. 2 years ago, at the first regulatory negotiation meeting, I suggested in my 3-minute allowed public speaking opportunity that the federal government begin to once again reassess the science, this time in detail. That advice was ignored. A year ago, the last meeting of the Environmental Regulatory Negotiation Project, I made the same recommendation. Again, that recommendation was ignored. I suggest that until such time as the science is fully, openly reviewed and assessed, there will be public distrust of the basis for regulation of our necessary regulation of our seashore. I want to conclude by saying that there is no doubt in the mind of any reasonable person that we desperately need a management system for access to our seashore, given the increase in visitation, the many new roads coming into the area. That needs to be done in an open, rational, and complete manner. And the science cannot be left to environmental activists and lawyers to dictate what constitutes best available.